So Eileen's right. I was in the Peace Corps. When I came back from the Peace Corps, I decided I needed to do something to be of service to the United States now that I'd done it overseas. And my first job back here was working for Community Action Program Training Institutes, doing training and development for people who were less advantaged than many of us. And our territory with the team I was part of was south in the southwest of the United States. I operated out of Austin, Texas, and we would travel around. Nashville, Tennessee was one of the places we came to, as well as other places in the south, one of which was in eastern Arkansas, kind of eastern Texas, right near the border of Arkansas. So I want you to imagine a group of young people, enthusiastic, want to save the world, want to do their best to serve the impoverished communities in our country. And we're going to do some training of leaders in the local community. Now, if you're in East Texas, right in the border of Arkansas, and your venue is the local church, what's the denomination of that church likely to be? It's a Baptist church, absolutely correct. And I don't know how many of you have had the pleasure of being in a Baptist church. How many in this room have had a pleasure? Many of you, so you will know the answer to this question. So I am standing up in front. I happen to have grown up Methodist. Methodists don't act this way. Interesting, same religion, but different denomination, completely different culture. And so I've asked the person who's sponsoring us, where should I stand? And they said, to conduct the training. And they said, well, you're in the sanctuary, so you stand at the pulpit. You know, there was no PowerPoint slide, there was no streaming, there was just a group of people in pews in the congregation. And of course, if you're leading the congregation, you're standing behind the pulpit. So I'm standing there, and I'm 3 sentences or so in, about this far in as I am with you, to the introduction to the training that day, and something happened. What do you think happened? Yes. One thing, they open with a prayer, absolutely, and after that, and I'm speaking, and they say, Amen. They said amen. Or what else might they have said? Hallelujah, or praise it, exactly. So if at any time you're so moved in the next 30 minutes, please go right ahead. Thank you. You know, one of the things you learn from being up here, as I know all of you learn, is that it really helps to have feedback in this direction. So if there's any time you feel like shouting out anything in agreement or disagreement, please do so. I would enjoy that very much. Take me back to my roots. I want to talk to you today about this topic. You're already leading, just not frequently enough. This is from a chapter in the new book Barry and I just finished that Eileen mentioned called Learning Leadership. And we were curious about something. What do you think is the most frequently asked question Barry Posner and I get? What do you think is the most frequently asked question that we get? You got it. Are leaders born or made? And we have been saying for the last 30 years the following. I have never met a leader who was not born. We're all born. You know, so are architects and artists and engineers and computer scientists and lawyers and HR professionals. We're all born. Is it very helpful to ask about leadership? Are you born? By the way, we've never been asked, are managers born or made, interestingly. We've built MBA schools across the world because we didn't ask that question. We assumed that we could develop business people. Why don't we make the same assumption about leadership? Every time we ask the question, are you born or made, there's a whisper of doubt in our minds that maybe we just can't develop better leaders. So we explored this question, and we asked the following question. We said, what is the percentage of people who demonstrate no leadership capability whatsoever? None. What is the percentage of people who demonstrate zero capability in leadership? 0%? 3%? 50%? So we are all over the map on this. I'd like to give you a very precise number. And here's that number. Go back, please. There we go. 0.00013%. 13 ten-thousandths of a percent. So if you're in a 100-person organization, what's the probability you'll find one person with no leadership skills whatsoever? This is not a math test, but what do you, 0. What if you're in a 1,000-person organization, what's the chance you're going to find a person with no leadership skills? 0. In a 10,000-person organization, still 0. 100,000, still 0. You have to have 1 million people to find one person with no leadership skills at all. And yet, there's somehow the impression that we're lacking in leadership ability. It is absolutely not true. If you look at the numbers, according to our LPI, 2.5 million people in our database, and you look at the average score, if you scale it on 1 to 10, it's 7.7. So that's about a C+. Yes, not everyone is leading exceptionally well, but most people, the majority, are doing okay. So we wanted to disabuse ourselves of the notion that people don't possess some capability already within themselves to lead. So the question becomes not, are leaders born or made, but given who you are and what you have, can you lead better tomorrow than you're leading today? Thank you. The answer to that question is yes. And when we see people move from a 7.7 to an 8, we see engagement scores go up. And we see them go from an 8 to an 8.2, they go up. And we see them go from an 8.2 to a 9, they go up some more. Every time we improve ourselves a little bit, the engagement scores go up. We don't have to replace every leader in the world by another leader who does better just to improve engagement scores. Thank you. We all have that capability within us if, and it's a big if, we do 5 things. I'm going to tell you about each one of those in order. The first of those is you have to believe you can. Now, this seems intuitively obvious. I have to believe that I have the capability. You have to believe in yourself, because if you don't, you won't even try. The first place it starts is with the question, do I really truly believe deep down in my soul that I can lead better tomorrow than I can today? That answer has to be yes if you're going to develop as a leader. Melissa Poe, when we first met her, from Nashville, Tennessee, was awarded by the American Association of University Women and National Student Personnel Association about 5 years ago, the Woman of Distinction Award for leadership she began when she was in the 4th grade. She was 10 and 11 years old when she started an organization called Kids Face, Kids for a Clean Environment. She was watching TV one day and she saw this program which talked about the environment and the environment that she was going to grow up in, and she was rather frightened. So she went to her mom and dad and she said, we got to start doing something about this at home. And they did. They started recycling. They started doing, this is before it was really popular. This is now about 30 years ago. But she wasn't satisfied enough with what they were doing at home, so she decided she would have to do something at school. So she started an organization called Kids Face. It became a national organization, then an international organization when she left at 17 years old to turn it over to 2 15-year-olds because she wasn't a kid anymore. It had 2,000 chapters with 300,000 members, and they had planted 1 million trees. And in her acceptance speech for the Women of Distinction Award, she said this. She said, everything you need to be a successful leader you already have. You don't have to look to the man behind the curtain. Everything you need you already have. And as Dorothy knew, and she was invoking the Wizard of Oz. Dorothy knew she already had the ticket home, those red slippers. She just didn't realize it. The lion had that courage. The Tin Man had that heart. And the Scarecrow had the brain. Everything you need to become a leader, you already have. And that really is the essence of believing in yourself and believing you can. It starts with believing you already have the capability and potential, and the numbers tell it, that you can lead and be better tomorrow than you are today. The second thing we all need to do is aspire to excel. We have to have aspirations to be better. So, Jim, where do you see yourself in 10 minutes? According to the clock, I'm done, but I kind of like this slide. It's got my name and kind of looks like me, don't you think? But I wasn't the model for this, but I suppose I could have been. But it reminds us that we have to think longer term. The distinguishing practice of leaders is the ability to be forward-looking, inspiring a shared vision. That means they have to be able to see farther ahead. We have to, if we're going to become exceptional leaders, exemplary leaders, we have to see ourselves being better tomorrow than we are today. Imagine the following scenario. You're being awarded the Leader of the Year award 10 years from now. And people get up in front at the podium and they talk about you and they tell about the lessons they've learned from you and the ideals that you stand for and the lessons that they've learned from the stories that you've told and the feelings they have when they're around you and the evidence of your leadership. What do you hope they'll be saying? What are your aspirations as a leader? To become an exemplary leader, we need those aspirations, and we need aspirations that are driven by intrinsic values, not extrinsic values. The United States Army did an extraordinary study in which they followed 10,000 graduates from West Point over a 4 to 10 year period. And that's an extraordinary study because it's hard to get 10,000 people to be able to follow 10,000 people over that long a period of time who have had the same exact educational experience. And one of the things they did when everyone enters West Point is they're given some tests. One of the tests that they were given, one of the surveys they filled out was on the values that they held when they entered the academy. And they categorized them into intrinsic values and or internal values and instrumental or extrinsic values. Instrumental would be like, get a better job when I'm out of the military. Get more, higher pay. Internal would be to get good training as a leader, to serve my country. Who do you think performed better in the military over that 4 to 10 year period of time of this study? Those with the extrinsic values or those with the intrinsic values for signing up for the West Point in the first place? Intrinsic, internal. They were driven to become the best leaders they could be, not because they wanted to make more money or get a better job after they left the military, but because it was important to them to be the best leader they could be. How do we incent leaders inside organizations? Do we tell them enroll in this leadership development or become a leader because you'll make more money or you'll get a bigger bonus? We have to take a look at how we are describing the reasons for participating in leadership development if we're going to develop leaders who are truly driven to become the best they can be. The third thing you need to do is challenge yourself. You've heard this many times today, and you've seen living examples of people who had to challenge themselves in order to be doing what they're doing today. Challenge is the context for exemplary leadership, it turns out from the research that we've done. It's also the context for learning leadership. People who become exemplary leaders are constantly searching for opportunities to stretch themselves, job assignments that put them in places where they don't really know what to do, but they're going to know they're going to learn on the job. An international assignment, working on a project team. Those are the kinds of challenges that they look for and seek out for themselves, and that those who are in HR and leadership development provide for them. But it doesn't have to start just when you're at work. Kaylee Adair was a high school student when we talked to her. She's now a University of Alabama college student. And Kaylee had invited me to give a talk to her high school group of student body officers in Colorado. And after the talk, she wrote me a thank you note. And in the thank you note, she made this point. My absolute favorite thing about human beings is that we're never satisfied with our condition. That's a leadership attitude. Never being satisfied with our current condition. Challenge, change, adversity is the training ground for leadership. It's the training ground. We have to provide people who want to become leaders that kind of a training ground. Continuous improvement applies not just to products and services, it applies to people, and leaders are no exception. We have to challenge ourselves then to excel and improve. And you also have to engage support. Leaders do not accomplish anything extraordinary by themselves. Thank you. It takes a team of people to accomplish something extraordinary. Yet we have the habit in the press, and when we talk about leaders, as if it's one person who turns around a company, one person who makes the valuation of the company $1 billion. It takes a team of people. The same thing is true for leadership. Here on this stage and at other stages around the world, when artists get awards, what do? When they accept the award? They thank their managers. They thank their agents. They thank their teams. They thank their co-stars. They thank their band. They thank everyone who helped them because they know they wouldn't be there if it weren't for those people. Exemplary leaders know the same thing. They need supporters. They need fans. They need coaches. They need trainers. They need people who can help them. An example of this is Don Bennett. Don Bennett was the first amputee to climb Mount Rainier, 14,410 feet on one leg and two crutches. When he came down off that mountain, he said, I asked him, Don, what was the most important lesson you learned? And he said, well, the most important lesson I learned in climbing that mountain was that you can't do it alone. The same thing applies to leadership. You can't do it alone. So when Don came off that mountain, he looked at himself and he said, I'm in the best physical shape I've been in my entire life. What am I going to do? And his kids were playing basketball out in the driveway, and the ball happened to dribble to his feet, and Don instinctively kicked it with his one good leg. And a light bulb went off in his head, and he said, I think maybe I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to call up some friends, and we're going to go kick the ball around in the park. So he called up a few friends, and he said, come to the local park, we're going to kick the ball around. And that was the beginning of the Amputee Soccer League. Nearly 30 years later, that's Don Bennett in the white polo shirt and the khaki slacks, surrounded by the Los Lobos soccer players in Jalisco, Mexico, playing amputee soccer in a league that Don started. He's trying to qualify it as an Olympic sport, Paralympic sport. He's about 2 countries away. Everybody needs a Don Bennett in their lives. Everybody needs someone who cares about them enough to help them develop to become better than they can be. Because Don's real purpose wasn't climbing the mountain just to climb the mountain or start the league just so he could enjoy himself. It was to demonstrate to other people who were less able than he was that they could do more than even they thought they could. And the last thing that leaders do is practice deliberately. This is our son, Nicholas. Nicholas was #1 doubles and singles UC Davis for 3 of his 4 years. Yes, we're very proud of Nick. He's now working in Hollywood as a screenwriter, but when he was playing tennis and being recruited to play tennis out of high school, he was a very solid juniors player. We would interview coaches, and we talked to many coaches, and we asked them about their practice routine. I'll never forget the answer that Glenn Michibata gave us. Glenn said, I tell my players they have to practice 2 hours every day just to stay the same, more if they want to get better. 2 hours just to stay the same, more if they want to get better. Now, this is an amateur sport in a university where the whole purpose of Nick going there was to get a degree so he could learn some skills to get a job. It wasn't to play tennis, but he had to practice 2 hours a day just to stay the same, more if he wanted to get better. How many leaders do you know who practice 2 hours a day just to stay the same, more if they want to get better? Now, every time I say that to an audience of executives, they say, I don't have 2 more hours in a day. And I would agree. I don't want you to add 2 more hours onto your day. I want you to find 2 hours during your day to practice. So the question for all of us in leadership development is, how do we make the playing field into a practice field? How do we turn regular routine activities inside organizations into opportunities to learn, grow, and develop? So I'll leave you with one final thought, something that you can do to apply all of this. At the end of every day, ask yourself this question: what have I done today to improve so that I'm better today than I was yesterday? If you do that every day for every year, you've got 365 ways in which you've improved. If you can do that for 10 years, you've got 3,650 ways you've improved. Try that exercise. And remember one last thing, and that is the secret to success in life. The secret to success is stay in love. Staying in love gives you the fire to really ignite other people, to see inside other people, to have a greater desire to get things done than other people. A person who is not in love doesn't really feel the kind of a fire that helps them to get ahead and lead others and to achieve. Stay in love. That was said to us by Major General John Stanford. I'll never forget it. It's probably the most important lesson I've learned in all of the years of researching leadership, and so I have only one last prescription for you. Love them and lead them. Thank you all very much. Thank you.